Coming up on Lawmakers, the House and Senate reach a compromise on the supplemental budget and return $142 million to property taxpayers. The Senate passes its version of a bill that would require a physician to offer an ultrasound to a woman seeking an abortion. And the effort to place a portrait of Coretta Scott King in the Capitol seems to be at an end, at least for this session. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, Wandy Lawson and David Zelski.
Good evening. Also on tonight's program, a bill that would create a statewide system for franchising the delivery of television service passes the Senate.
And tensions grow between the House and Senate over legislative maneuvering, but our top story tonight, compromise on the 07 budget. We told you last night that here on Lawmakers that the House and Senate budget conferees will be working into the night on a compromise to the 2007 supplemental budget. About 10 p.m., they struck a deal, and this afternoon, the conferees signed a compromise. Lawmakers' Jesse Freeman is live at the Capitol with the rest of that story. Jesse.
Well, in one, the Senate leader said House leaders had loaded the state's supplemental budget with one-time spending projects. The House leaders maintained the validity of some of these ventures, including a $5 million for a dental school in Augusta. A deal was struck that delivers surplus money back to homeowners in the form of about a $100 tax refund. It's a compromise in a very contentious debate.
We were fairly contentious. I think that's a good word. We were trying to come to some agreement. As we moved through the evening, we came to an impasse and saw that there was no way to come to an agreement on either one's budget.
I think going in, we realized we had two diabolically opposed budgets and crafted different ways.
Tensions eased a little last night as the two sides agreed on a version of House Bill 94. The players made the announcement just after 10 p.m. The agreement precludes many of the spending projects put in by the House, but House leaders claim a bit of victory in that it includes small tax breaks that they say comes from their side.
The House proposed a compromise to give a tax credit back to the homeowners of Georgia. The Senate accepted, and I think the winners last night were the people of Georgia.
The idea of a tax refund is an excellent idea.
The two sides met this afternoon to seal the deal and autograph the conference committee report. However, it seems not everyone at the Capitol was totally pleased with the deal.
It came about in a very strange fashion. I'm not sure that the budget negotiations conference table is the place to really discuss and talk about tax strategy and policy decisions, fiscal policy decisions such as occurred.
For now, the legislature will turn its attention to the 2008 budget.
We finished 07 last night. We're going to finish up 08 today or in the morning. We'll have an appropriations meeting in the morning, have that on the floor Friday, and they'll have it by Friday afternoon.
We've got some hard work to do tomorrow and over the weekend to try to get a budget ready to pass out of committee Monday.
And I believe Chairman Harbin and Hill gave you an idea of what you can expect in the way of budget proceedings over the next several days. If all goes according to plan, the Senate will probably vote on the 08 budget on Tuesday, and the Conference Committee can work on that through the end of the next week. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Thank you, Jesse. Senator Chip Rogers took a point of personal privilege this morning to commend the Conference Committee and Lieutenant Governor Cagle for their decision to give the $142 million back to Georgia property owners.
You will be handed out I did this in color for everyone's enjoyment, a sheet that shows uncontrolled spending by state and local governments all across this nation. I rise today to present this information to you and to thank this body and our leadership, both in the Senate and the House, on what occurred last night. If you take a look at the pie chart, you will see that the percentage of our nation's economy that is now dedicated to government is growing at an alarming rate. In fact, the percentage of our economy since 1947 to today has grown by almost 300%. If we had kept the same percentage of money going to government in 1947 as today, it would mean $3,917 per person. A family of four would save $15,668 if we would have kept our level of government today as it was in 1947. The bottom line is this: governments are simply spending too much of the people's money. I want to thank the senator from the 4th, the senator from the 1st, the senator from the 19th, the senator from the 51st, the minority leadership of this body, and most importantly the lieutenant governor for showing leadership and doing what we did last night and finally taking a stand. If you'll notice at the very bottom of this sheet, it says these charts show that 21% of the entire economy has been transferred from the free market private sector to federal and state and local government spending. Folks, this is out of control spending. And then the final words on this sheet say, some label this a march of socialization. Well, today I'm proud to announce that in this state, in this body, for a brief moment, that march has come to a halt.
Middle Georgia Congressman Jim Marshall visited the state Senate and House today to laud the General Assembly for maintaining an $81 million bridge loan in the budget to continue funding for the PeachCare insurance program.
I applaud the decision that you've apparently made in conference to go ahead and fund PeachCare through 2007 to keep that program stable and not cut back on it. I would encourage you to do that and more with 2008. What's going to happen in Congress is PeachCare through the state children's health insurance program will be funded at least as well as it is funded now, and it's quite likely that it's going to receive even more funding. You'll see all kinds of initiatives. It'll be brought by both Republicans and Democrats, both houses, up in Congress. There'll be all kinds of initiatives to expand the program. All kinds of different ideas will be suggested for expanding the children's health insurance program, which is PeachCare here in Georgia. And I think Georgia needs to be in sync with that. 73% of the cost is covered by the federal government. Georgia comes up with 27%. I think Georgia could potentially lead the nation in coming up with different ways of trying to get more and more of these kids from poor families insured.
Congressman Marshall also encouraged the General Assembly to protect the state's military bases and the industry that develops around them.
We have more than our fair share of military bases. Those military bases have needs. There are a lot of public-private partnerships that attempt to address those needs. We got to do as much as we possibly can to support those bases. They're great for our economy. Robins Air Force Base, for example, is the largest industrial employer in the state. It's 1/3 of the economy in Middle Georgia. And yet the local government sometimes can't get together and do some of the things that need to be done in order to enhance the mission capacity of a place like Robins. I'd suggest we think, Mr. Speaker, about forming a statewide authority that focuses on these issues, that has some real clout and some power to help with some of the issues that need to be addressed in order for Georgia to be and continue to be the preeminent location for military bases.
Marshall has made 4 trips to Iraq to visit U.S. military installations.
The state Senate passed a bill today that some say intrudes on the rights of women to have an abortion. Lawmaker Sandra PARRISH joins us live with more. Sandra.
David, stripped of its original language in committee, House Bill 147 is now the mirror of Senate Bill 66 that never made it to the floor of the Senate for a vote. Today, senators passed it, but not before several Democrats stood up to oppose it.
While I have a great deal of respect for the senator from the 50th and all of her work on this bill, I think that it's too important for us not to have a robust debate and for senators to have the opportunity to amend the bill.
The day began with the Senate passing a motion to engross House Bill 147, meaning the measure could not be amended during debate on the floor.
On the motion for engrossment offered by the senator from the 50th, the yeas are 32 and the nays are 23. And the motion or the bill is engrossed.
The sponsor of Senate Bill 66, Senator Nancy Schaefer, explained what House Bill 147 now does.
House Bill 147 seeks that 1, all facilities in which abortions are performed either shall have functional ultrasound or sonogram equipment on site or shall provide information regarding medical facilities that provide ultrasound or sonogram services. As a part of the informed consent to the abortion procedure, a pregnant female desiring an abortion shall be offered an ultrasound or sonogram examination of her unborn child and an opportunity to view the ultrasound or sonogram image of her unborn child.
And I think it's best, even though the bill is much improved than originally entered, that we go ahead and vote it down today and allow doctors and individuals seeking these type of procedures to make decisions that are for their best medical interest. And many times these ladies are the victims of rape, incest, abuse, or have other traumatic experiences going into their lives. So inject this by state mandate I feel is not necessary.
We have become a regular mill that churns out bills to limit women's choices and medical decisions with their doctors.
Now, in the end, House Bill 147 passed 36-17 and now goes back to the House to approve changes made in the Senate. Reporting live, I'm Sandra Parrish for Lawmakers.
Thank you, Sandra. In other news, the House today agreed to a Senate amendment to House Bill 274, giving final passage to changes in the licensing of notary publics. But before the House voted on Senate changes to bills, House Speaker Glenn Richardson admonished the Senate for amending so many House measures.
I'm on caution every member that I am watching Senate amendments on House bills. And the chair on my own motion is going to rule some of them non-germane already. If you suspect I'm going to rule it non-germane, you're probably right. There's some on here today that are just not going. We're not going to vote. We're just going to rule it non-germane and send it back. I don't know if it's an accident. It seems to me that they're putting a lot of amendments on our bills and ripping our language out and putting theirs on. So that's not going to happen. I'm not going to put you in a situation like that. If it's germane, I tell you, we have a guide dog bill or something over here that lets the people that train guide dogs take them the same place blind people can, and they put a fighting dog amendment on there with a criminal statute, and that's just not going. That's not going to fly. So whoever's got that one, I'm going to send that one back. What's the bill number on that one? House Bill 366. Chair rules it non-germane and sends it back. It's disagreed. Thank you for your time, Representative. Tell them to take that off if they want to help people train guide dogs. If they want to have a dog fighting bill, introduce a bill, we'll give it a hearing. If it passes, we'll get it to the floor.
In addition to sending House Bill 366 back to the Senate, the House also insisted on its position on Senate Bill 17, allowing optometrists to prescribe a wide variety of medications. That's over the Senate version, which limits the number of drugs. Senate Bill 17 went back to the Senate. House Bill 81, which covers charter fishing licenses, was also returned to the Senate with an addition to the Senate amendment, giving active duty, military, and veterans a 50% discount on their licenses. And the House agreed 151-4 to a measure to remove abandoned watercraft. The substitute to House Bill 132 also returns to the Senate.
Despite reaching a compromise on the 2007 supplemental budget, legislative wrangling continues between the House and Senate. This morning, it spilled over into the House Rules Committee meeting, where Senator Joseph Carter presented the final bill.
It simply does one thing. It prohibits the sale of tobacco products and non-tobacco products from the same vending machine. We're starting to see that in some other states, and it prohibits that here in Georgia.
Any further requests? Any other senators? We've got several Senate bills here on the calendar. We've had yesterday, not one senator asked for a measure. Did anybody remember a senator asking for a bill yesterday? And then we've had one that took the time, and I'm appreciative of your efforts. But we've got several propositions on here, but I'm not going to do it for.
Maybe you can tell his fellow senators.
What?
Maybe you can tell your fellow senators to come to rules, and we'll be glad to
consider that. That happens to us all the time.
Now, only a substitute to Senate Bill 224 covering insurance for commercial vehicles was placed on the House debate calendar for Friday.
In other news, a bill proposing that a picture of Coretta Scott King be placed in the Capitol beside her husband, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s portrait, failed to pass the House Special Rules Committee again this morning. Lawmakers BRIDGET SNAPP joins us live at the Capitol with that story. Bridget.
In Wandi, Representative Roberta Abdul-Salam originally introduced this measure after Mrs. King's passing last year, but was told the Assembly would not hear the bill until this year, and it would not consider a part of the bill that would have recognized Mrs. King's birthday each year. Today's meeting wasn't the first scheduled to hear House Resolution 121. Representative Abdul-Salam missed 2 meetings earlier this session, citing illness and heavy traffic as the reasons. In answer to Chairman Calvin Hill's challenge to demonstrate that Ms. King was a leader in her own right, Representative Salam spent over 30 minutes this morning lauding Ms. King's personal achievements. Despite these urgings, Representative Doug Holt's subsequent motion to pass the bill failed to get a second, and the bill died before even going to a committee vote. A visibly upset Representative Salam reacted to the bill's failure.
The lack of respect for African American women in all positions. by Caucasian men is so blatant in this country.
Representative Salam went on to say that the committee's actions today were worse than radio personality Don Imus's recent comments about the Rutgers University women's basketball team.
It's just like calling Mrs. King a nappy-headed nigger.
Chairman Hill said the bill's failure had nothing to do with race or with Representative Salam's absence from the earlier meetings of this session.
If you look at the portraits that are at the Capitol, they're of legislators, founders of the state, etc. They're primarily people that have impacted the laws and the formation of the state of Georgia.
Representative Abdul Salam said her efforts to honor Mrs. King did not end today. She talked about motivating the citizens of Georgia to act, potential boycotts, and urging Governor Perdue to pass an executive order. Reporting live from the Capitol, I'm Bridget Snap for Lawmakers.
For those of you with access to the internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Visit our website at gpb.org for more information. Click on Watch Online, then follow the instructions for watching live or looking at past Lawmaker programs in our archives. That website address again is gpb.org. Just another way we keep you apprised of what's going on at the General Assembly.
We'd like to recommend a website that's a valuable resource for information about the Georgia General Assembly. Go to www.legis.ga.gov. That website is a great research tool that we at Lawmakers use on a regular basis.
A bill that would replace local television franchising rules with a statewide system passed the Senate today with a 52-2 vote. Lawmakers QUANDRA Collins joins us live with more. QUANDRA.
David, House Bill 227, which is known as the Consumer Television Act, gives Georgians another option for television viewing. Along with satellite, cable, and antenna, this bill gives Georgians a new option through their phone line. Senator David Schaefer explained.
House Bill 227 in front of you does basically one thing. It allows providers of television service, whether they provide that over the telephone line or the cable line, to choose one of two systems of regulation. They can use the existing local franchise that they negotiate with each county or city, or they can choose to have a statewide franchise, which would allow them to offer services statewide without having to negotiate with each city and county.
Senator David Schaefer presented the bill, which is a committee substitute, which makes reference to the number of public education government channels a county would be entitled to based on its population. He also mentions that the bill addresses 4 key principles, which are to create a level playing field for providers so that competitors have access to the regulated options that are available, make sure revenue streams in the counties and cities are protected, continue to allow the counties and cities to manage the right-of-ways, and promote competition among the various providers. Although there was no opposition, Senator Regina Thomas warns that the measure may sound better than it really is.
They need to know that this may not be all that it's cracked up to be. And I want you to know that if it happens, I can say, and I'm not above saying, I told you so. But I want them to know that they're going to get what they asked for, and I hope it's what they want.
Again, House Bill 227 passed the Senate by a vote of 52-2. It now goes back to the House for their approval. Reporting live, I'm QUANDRA Collins for Lawmakers.
Thank you, QUANDRA. The Senate unanimously passed legislation today that aims to put checks and balances into Georgia's foster care system. Senator Preston Smith explains why he thinks House Bill 153 can help Georgia's children in foster care.
Many of you have probably heard from members of your district that have children that have been in state custody, have been placed in foster homes over and over and over and again, sometimes placed multiple times in 1 week, sometimes over a 3-week period. You'll hear of children that have placed 6 times, and we've all heard stories like that. And it's a difficult process to go through, but there are some really bad horror stories that arise out of these children that get bounced around from home to home to home. And what we, of course, all want is for there to be a safe and stable placement for these children. This bill will require that if the Department of Family and Children Services is going to move a child to a different location, that they notify the parents, the family members, the attorneys involved, the guardians, whoever are the stakeholders in that situation, and that they notify them at least 5 days before the placement change, and that during that 5-day period, the court hold a hearing to listen to the reasons for the change and make the approval or deny the approval based upon listening to the other people that are involved as well. So it will put some checks and balances on bouncing these children around. It is very clear in this bill that if there's a determination made that it is in the child's health or welfare may be endangered, then they can go ahead and make the placement change and then hold the hearing subject to the discussion that may be had, and that notice doesn't have to delay that change if it would endanger the child's life.
Again, House Bill 153 passed by substitute unanimously and now goes back to the House.
The House today voted to bring the state's banking regulations in line with federal homeland security measures. Representative James Mills presents Senate Bill 70.
We need to have background checks in some of our check cashing and money order transmitters to make sure that they're not laundering money for terrorist organizations. And so I'm going to yield the well at this time, Mr. Speaker. Ask for your favorable vote. We'll let you know that the Georgia Bankers Association, the Credit Union, the Community Bankers Association, the check cashers groups, all financial institutions represented are supportive of Senate Bill 70.
The House agreed to passage of SB 70 by a vote of 157 to 4. Because of changes made in the House Banks and Banking Committee, the measure now returns to the Senate.
The Senate passed a House bill today which aims to give more stability and uniformity to Georgia's court-appointed special advocates program known as CASA. Senator Preston Smith explains how CASA works and the changes implemented in House Bill 270.
The children of our state need representation, need someone to advocate on their behalf, but the legal system often falls far short in providing them with a voice in our court systems. Very often, of course, children don't have legal standing because they are minors, because they're designated that way under the law, because they don't have standing to bring actions on their own behalf, and frankly, as a practical matter, because they don't have the resources and the ability to hire those to be their voices for them. So the courts over time in Georgia and many other states have developed court-appointed special advocates who largely are volunteers and appointed by the court, authorized to represent the children and stand in their stead to advocate on their behalf throughout deprivation proceedings. And all of the roles and responsibilities of a CASA are presently found in various different sources, different publications, and different books. What this proposes to do is to simplify that, to organize it, to codify it into our statute in one collective location inside Georgia's code. Last year there were 1,650 CASA volunteers that advocated on behalf of 8,200 children in Georgia. And almost without exception, these are good-hearted people who are giving their time to their community without asking for anything in return and with very little thanks to advocate on behalf of Georgia's children. We occasionally hear about the bad apples, those that make poor judgments, those that make bad decisions, and they stand out largely because they don't represent the majority of the good, well-intentioned people that do volunteer in this area. This bill will allow in the code for the removal of those that are not acting in the best interest of the child or in contradiction to the purposes of the act.
Again, the Senate passed House Bill 270 54-0, and it now goes back to the House.
As you heard earlier in our broadcast, tensions continue to mount between the Senate and House over a perceived lack of movement of Senate legislation by the House. A House Education Committee was expected to vote today on Senate Bill 10, which would provide vouchers for students with special needs to attend private schools. Lawmakers' Lannie Walker is live at the Capitol with the latest. Lannie.
And Wandy, the committee did not vote on Senate Bill 10, also known as the Georgia Special Needs Scholarship Act, as was expected today. Sponsor of the bill, Senate President Pro Tem Eric Johnson, released this statement. I am disappointed that House leaders seem opposed to helping children with special needs. I will continue to make the case that this legislation deserves to be considered and will pursue whatever options are available. The committee did, however, vote on Senate Bill 9, which, if passed, would prevent teachers from being coerced or intimidated into changing a student's grade. Senator Chip Rogers co-authored the bill, known as the Grade Integrity Act.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of pressures these days for teachers to change grades that they otherwise would not change. We have, of course, a situation with athletics, the Hope Scholarship. There's just a lot of pressures they're put under. And we've heard a number of stories from teachers who have been coerced into changing grades that the student didn't earn. So we want to make sure that teachers in control of their classroom and that the grade given to the student is the actual grade they earned.
Senate Bill 9 received a due pass recommendation by substitution and now heads to the House Rules Committee. Reporting live, I'm Lannie Walker for Lawmakers.
Thank you, Lannie. Driving without a license could possibly become a felony here in Georgia. Testimony was heard today in a House Judiciary Subcommittee on Senate Bill 15, which, if passed, would increase penalties to those with a suspended license or those caught driving without a license.
This simply takes the punishment for driving on a suspended license and makes it the punishment for driving without ever having had a driver's license. So instead of just getting a slap on your hand, we're going to treat you just like you had a suspended license if you drive without ever having obtained a Georgia driver's license. It also increases the punishment for driving on a suspended license on the third offense and makes it a felony. There are some folk that just don't get the message.
Now, controversy arose over the strict penalties that would be enforced. Some feel the punishment is too excessive for the crime.
So current law is there's already a second offense is a high and aggravated. So first offense is a misdemeanor, second offense is high and aggravated. The problem is we got these repetitive folks, and law enforcement tells us the felony message is a message that I think needs to be said.
Now, a vote was not taken today, and the bill will remain in the subcommittee.
AT&T was at the Capitol today to make a large donation to the 2007 Tour de Georgia. The tour celebrates its 5th year as the state's premier cycling event. The tour has become a welcome tradition with the spectatorship of over 2.3 million traveling attendees since the tour began in 2003. The culminating event occurred today in the governor's office with AT&T Georgia President Sylvia Anderson presenting Governor Perdue with a sponsorship check for $500,000.
AT&T has stepped up this year with a significant sponsorship, and Sylvia, we want to thank you and AT&T for your involvement in this event. It's about 12 to 15 communities across our state, 15 teams, I think, in 12 communities, 600 miles of Georgia beauty, and it's something that local communities have come to really enjoy.
In addition to financial sponsorship, AT&T is encouraging its employees to volunteer for the tour. Lawmakers will not be seen tomorrow because the Georgia General Assembly will be in recess. Be sure to join us when the legislature reconvenes this Friday for Legislative Day 36. Lawmakers returns with all the latest from under the Gold Dome Friday night at 7. If you've missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, be sure to tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. Now stay tuned for Georgia Outdoors. Tonight's episode features Georgia's sea creatures. Georgia Outdoors is coming up next here on GPB.
And that is our broadcast for this, the 35th Legislative Day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm David Zelsky.
And I'm Inwandi Lawson. Thanks for joining us and have a great evening.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.